Hello, hi everyone. Can you hear me? Hi Bora, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Apologies for the glitches. I think there's technical issues. Apologies to the audience, but nevertheless, it is our great pleasure to have Bora Arslan, amazing woman in AI supporter and global chief data analytics officer from IAG. Bora has been in the journey with Women in AI from the day one. And it is amazing pleasure to introduce and to have Bora to take us through today about AI beyond the data science. Over to you, Bora.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'll talk about some other aspects of how we can excel in AI, actually. And I believe everything I'll talk about has to do with what actually women can bring to AI. So that's relevant to our discussion today. So, of course, there has been a big hype about AI. Everybody's talking about AI. Every vendor that I have been working with for decades now kind of call themselves an AI company. Even the butcher around the corner now is an AI butcher. So it's good momentum going on. And one actually good aspect of all of that hype is that actually we now have tons of free frameworks and available tips and hints as to what we can do, what kind of progression plan that we can have with AI. So this thing that you see on this slide here is a very useful framework from Gartner, for instance. So Gartner is saying with this framework that the whole AI journey starts with first trying to help your colleagues, your organizations understand what AI means, and then they start appreciating the value of that, and then gradually you start kind of putting some ideas in practice, create some proof of concept ideas. And eventually you kind of ultimately make AI as part of your business DNA. So at the beginning, you probably try to do some AI work to connect that AI work with your ecosystem. But eventually, when you have the desired level of maturity, that ecosystem's heart becomes AI anyway. So this is another framework from Gartner saying the role of chief data officers, chief analytics officers are evolving throughout that journey as well. So in early phases of this journey, all the data people and analytics people are associated with tasks like data management, and then gradually, as you create these AI capabilities, but more importantly, infuse these AI capabilities into business operations. As the chief data officer, chief analytics officer, you become the one managing that AI aspect of the operation itself, which kind of gives you a lot of P&L responsibilities as well. So this is a bit of a view of kind of spectrum of AI capabilities that we are trying to take advantage of nowadays. On one dimension, you can talk about the complexity of data, structured data, semi-structured data, unstructured data, whatnot. And on the other dimension, you can talk about the level of sophistication that you can go deep into. Even though it's a mouthful and it's a very cool thing to do, actually, robotic process automation kind of stuff is actually not that kind of complex stuff. And does not really require a very complex data. So you can start with that, doing a lot of beneficial stuff. And then as you move into more complex data structures, you can do more complex things as well, get into deep learning kind of stuff. Ultimately, actually, the goal most of the time is to turn unstructured data assets such as voice into a new and very effective digital channel, so that we can have things like voice bots and voice service assistants. That's kind of the spectrum, more or less. And this picture is talking about pretty much the same thing, adding a little bit of a flavor of what kind of progression plan that we can go through. What kind of work that you can start with, what you can move on to next, and kind of have a kind of a plan in accordance with this kind of mindset as well. And as you evolve in these kind of journeys, as I was saying, the role of chief data officer, chief analytics officer changes. So you move from being an information provider into really running that real-time operation with the support of AI. So as Angel said, I serve right now as chief analytics officer to Insurance Australia Group. So what you're seeing on the screen here is on the left is our corporate strategy. So this has been quite fixated for years, actually. So three things that we are trying to focus on. We are trying to orient everything around our customers, be as relevant as possible for our customers. We are trying to simplify our operations, and especially companies like us, which is 175 years old, very old conventional company, grew through lots of acquisitions and has a very rich legacy systems. This simplification becomes very, very important. And also focus on agility, not just talking about the agile methodology of doing technical work, but we're talking about being more rapid, with things that we attack on. And this picture on the right is saying, when it comes to AI, what we're seeing is that actually globally there are very common pathways. So either companies are using AI on the left, to focus on their core businesses. So they use AI capabilities to optimize and make their core business operations as effective as possible. And the return on that scenario is actually more rapid because that's your business, ins and outs of that business. So you kind of start plugging the AI capabilities into that, and you start converting your operations into more AI-empowered operations. So the return is a lot more steeper. But the downside of that is that over time, because you're focusing on your core business, the benefit that you collect from the AI plateaus, even though that benefit can be very handsome in some situations, billions of dollars kind of benefits, but it plateaus. On the other hand, some companies are actually trying to leverage these AI capabilities to focus on new businesses. Sometimes not necessarily a new business per se, but new customer experiences. They create these new services, new products, as I said, new customer experiences. And that might actually turn into new businesses as well. So the gain in that scenario is a lot slower because it takes a lot longer time of readiness. You need to kind of make your data assets AI friendly, if it's especially data assets. But the upside of this path is that actually, because you are focusing on new things, there is no cap here. So the potential there is humongous. And we are seeing lots of companies, very comparable to Insurance Australia Group kind of conventional companies, trying to do that. So as Insurance Australia Group, we actually are trying to do both. And what you're seeing on top there in the little rectangle is actually what we call our applied AI framework. On the left, what we call BPA is same thing as RPA. We call the business process automation. And then scientific measurements, the experimental culture, being able to log everything that you do, what kind of levers that you're using to serve what objective is essential. Actually, it's quite a foundational thing. The bottom, the two elements there are machine learning powered personalization. Is all about really doubling down on machine learning to take the best advantage of your structured data and on the right, what we call cognitive customer experience, actually taking advantage of unstructured data to create those new customer experiences I just talked about. So as Insurance Australia Group, we are actually very mature with our structured data assets, and we are actually doing already a lot of cool AI work with that structured data capability that we have. Our pricing is quite world-class. Talking to lots of global insurance companies, it's very evident actually we are, in many cases, quite ahead of many insurance companies in terms of the pricing sophistication that we have, thanks to AI leverage that we have. Actually, an important part of that pricing is also a unique way for us to look at the measurement and performance as well. We have quite a bit of scale personalization activities going on, which I'll talk a little bit briefly later about. We have capabilities like what we call real-time decision engine, and one of our subsidiaries, Mbiata, is actually quite crucial bringing this capability to life. And nowadays, actually, they're working on commercializing this capability for other companies to take advantage of that as well. And on the unstructured data part, we are probably not as mature as the structured data assets picture, but we still made a lot of progress on that front as well. We focus quite a bit on being able to process images because as an insurance company, it's important that actually we leverage images to evaluate the severity of a car involved in an accident and predict maybe repair costs associated with that car. We are focusing on voice. We had quite a bit of challenge because historically we have years and decades of voice recordings, but with the new regulations, we need to make sure that actually that data only includes usable data. So we had to go through quite a bit of a reduction kind of process as well. But we're making progress with voice quite a bit, and NLP is definitely a focus for us. So we are doing quite a bit of a job on the unstructured data part as well. And so this slide is to talk a little bit about some scaled AI applications that we built recently, actually. On the left, you're seeing a reference to a predictive total loss. What that refers to is that for an insurance company like us, for especially a motor car insurance company, usually total loss is a very significant chunk of the claim costs, if you will, a very, very significant chunk of claims costs. And as the technology improves, the cars are becoming a lot easier to turn into a total loss actually these days, because it's not like old school metal cars that you can actually hammer things down back into what it was before. So total loss is actually on the rise. But it's not the most delightful customer experience, unfortunately. So it usually takes quite a bit, really quite almost close to a month, long process of the assessors evaluating the car. The car is being thoroughly checked out, up until it comes to a decision. Actually, yeah, this car is a total loss. And then after that, there is another lengthy process to bring the customers to a settlement. So it's not the most pleasing customer experience, unfortunately. But using NLP, these days, we actually built an AI capability that tells us with very, very high accuracy the moment the customer made a claim, the likelihood of this car turning into a total loss or not. And then we let the customers know early on so that they can start preparing accordingly. So it's a very cool AI capability that we are very proud of. And we have lots of next steps associated with that. such as using images, as I talked about. And another thing that we are working on, actually, we built the AI bit already, is the liability. So which part of the involving party is liable for that? And also, as I said, we are personalizing a quote journey, bringing customers to a very personalized, insurance coverage. This is also, AI. So I hope this gives you a bit of an idea about the kind of AI activities that we have at scale, today. So I was gonna say, a very important part of this AI work is being able to actually create a collective plans with all involving parties, whether it's marketing or your operations or your tech, and this is an important part of that. I'm hearing myself back. I think it's a sign that I need to wrap up, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Anyway.
Bora. I think
Sure.
already audience is asking if the recording is available, and also they'd like to contact you through LinkedIn. I will share the link that you kindly shared with us. So Bora, thank you so much for your wonderful talk. We really appreciate it, and I hope as much as I enjoyed today, all the very much. And they will be contact you if they have any questions.
Sure, and my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Boran. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Bora Arslan. Thank you so much. We'll move on to the next stage. Thank you so much. Bye, Bora. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.